Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm reviewing a Great Western pannier tank by Bachmann. A couple of years ago, Accurascale announced a brand new all-singing, all-dancing 57XX pannier tank. And sure enough, within 1 year and 1 month of Accurascale's announcement, Bachmann managed to announce and release this. This is Bachmann's pannier tank model, and unlike Accurascale's, which is going to be new tooled from the rails up, this is an old tooling. This dates back, I believe, to 2005. And I have looked at one of these models before, a long time ago, and you can see it behind me there. It's the Railway Children pannier tank, and my experience with that model was not a happy one. If memory serves, it broke down during the review, possibly because the quality of the mechanism wasn't great by modern standards, and I had to return it to the retailer and get it exchanged. So for this new release of Bachmann's pannier tank, I'm looking forward to lots of improvements and possibly even a new tooled chassis. Just a little joke there, we are talking about Bachmann after all. I reckon their factory will still be churning out early 2000s models long after humanity is dead and gone, but either way, we're looking at this one today, and possibly with the new Accurascale model in mind. The price of this newly released Bachmann pannier tank is surprisingly low for Bachmann. So the full RRP is £124.95. which isn't that great because the Accurascale one is only about £15 more than that, and that's brand new, not 20 years old. But at the retailers, it's a lot more palatable. £99.95 is the price, which does make it obviously quite a lot cheaper than Accurascale's, which I guess is a good reason to check this one out and see what this is like. But that price of £99 or £100 to be more roundabout is a bit of an illusion really, because it's exactly the same price as the Accurascale SECRP class, which was a re-release from 2018 and not 2005 like this pannier tank. And that P-class was fantastic. So for a much less niche model, there are so many of these pannier tanks produced, it's surprising to see this at the same price, knowing that probably it's not going to be quite as good unless it has been heavily updated, which, let's be honest, it hasn't. But we'll see, won't we, in just a second. But anyway, it is a more affordable pannier tank, that's true, but is it worth picking up? We're going to find out today. Anyway, if you're interested in checking out the range of these, there's a few different versions on offer by Bachmann. I will pop an affiliate link down below for you. But for now, let's see what this is like and get started. Okay, my first Bachmann 57XX, or 8750 to be precise, with a prototypical livery. Obviously that Railway Children version had a fictional livery, so it'll be nice to see this loco in a realistic guise. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So this is the version I've gone for. It's 32-198. It's the Great Western 8750 tank, number 3650, in the Great Western green with the shirt button logo on board, which we'll see in just a second. And this does have an 8-pin DCC socket, which means, yes, that aspect of the model at least hasn't been upgraded. Anyway, let me show you the back of the box, because here there is a brief history of this class in real life. So pause and read that if you'd like to, although I will give you a bit of background on this loco in just a second. Right, let's see what this is like then. Not looked at one of these for ages. I mean, the Railway Children pack must have been getting on for 10 years ago now. So yeah, I'm interested to see what a newly released version of this model is going to be like. Right, let's pull the blister pack out if I can. And let's have a look first at the date inside the box. I would say that's May 2024. It's unlikely to be November, because I think they came out in November. I would guess these were put into production off the back of Accurascale's announcement, possibly in some sort of attempt to compete, which is fair enough. You know, perhaps this will be a great competitor. It's certainly cheaper. Anyway, let's have a look at this then. So a bit of paperwork here. You can see the exploded diagram on the right. We've got the loco body, bit about the mechanism. There's the motor. We'll see if it's a 3 or a 5-pole motor, hopefully later on. No flywheel though. And then the rest of the mechanism. It almost looks like this is a split chassis model, but it's not. If you look at the base keeper plate, you can see wiper pickups, which is good. Anyway, more on that a bit later on. Information on the side, general notes, DCC, running in, lubrication. That's all fine, so quite generic. And then I think this is an even more generic piece. We'll have a quick look. Okay, product maintenance and care. So running in period, cleaning and maintenance, lubrication, DCC. It's much the same, just less specific to the loco. All right, useful. Right, so let's have a look and see what accessories we get. Oh, none at all. All right, interesting. Can that be right? Yeah, there's definitely no accessories. All right, maybe they're all fitted to the loco though. Buffer beam details and such, we'll see. Right, so one thing that I imagine will have been improved on this loco is the decoration and the paint finish, etc. Obviously, this has been done recently at Bachmann's state-of-the-art factory. Hopefully, this will look good. Here's the reveal. Wow, it really does. Yeah, look at that. This, as far as I know, is not a die-cast body, but it shines just beautifully, just like the real panniers do. That already, even though it's not a sort of tooling improvement, that has totally transformed this. This looks like a much better quality model now, which is great. Right, lifting up. And you know what? The weight is not bad. I don't know whether it's going to be heavier than Acura scales with all of the metal on board. I would say almost certainly not. I have held the Acura scale model. It was insanely heavy. It's not your super premium modern loco. It dates back to 2005 and it shows. But as I often say on this channel, a good paint job really can improve a model that is old and basic, and I think that is what's going on here. At least from a distance, this does not look bad at all. This looks like a perfectly serviceable model. And so for 100 quid, you know, even though there are better value models out there, at the moment this doesn't seem too bad. But we'll take a much closer look at this in just a second. We'll talk about what features it does have or perhaps doesn't have, and I'll show you all of that in detail. But first, let's have a bit of background on these panniers in real life. The Great Western 5700 class was introduced in 1929 and consisted of an enormous number of pannier tank locomotives. Nearly 900 of these were built in total over about 20 years, and they were comprised of several different subclasses, including the 8750 class we have here. They were designed by Charles Collett for light goods and shunting work, but they were also used for light passenger work too, making them incredibly versatile. As far as the Great Western were concerned, pannier tanks like this were much better than side tanks or saddle tanks. Side tanks usually descend right down to the running plate, which makes maintenance tricky. Saddle tanks would have solved this problem, but they were incompatible with the awkwardly rectangular shape of the Great Western's preferred Belpaire fireboxes. A pannier tank like this, though, doesn't have to fit over the firebox, which solves that problem, nor does it reach all the way down to the running plate, making maintenance a lot easier. And as such, the Great Western successfully built and operated over 2,000 pannier tanks throughout their history. This 8750 variant was the same design, but it featured a higher cab roof with rectangular windows and grills rather than circular spectacles. They also had vacuum brakes and steam heating fitted as well. Upon nationalisation in 1948, the 5700s continued in service under British Railways, withdrawal not beginning until 1956 and not finishing until 1971. Today, while the vast majority of the class have been scrapped, a healthy 16 remain under preservation. And I'm not seeing any improvements at all here. In fact, the only difference I've noticed is a downgrade. They've gone backwards with it, and that's with reference to the weight. This loco weighs in at 189 grams, which is about 5 grams lighter than the Railway Children pannier that I've got. So I'm not sure what's responsible for the 5 grams of reduced weight here. Maybe I'll see that when I open up the model. But yeah, it's not very good. In fact, it's a bit crap. And I know this is a relatively cheap locomotive. You can pick this up at £100 from the retailers, but honestly, that's not cheap enough for this. I think at most this is an £80 locomotive, and I would not recommend buying one of these until the prices are down at that sort of level. So this is a very old and unrefined loco that has not been updated sufficiently. First things first, the handrails look really bad. The handrails themselves are fine, I suppose. The handrails are made of wire, but the holders are super large and chunky, and in fact they're quite distracting because of how large they are. That is not very good. You will have noticed in the box there are no accessories. That means no lamps or anything. Well, that's a good job because there aren't even any lamp brackets on this model. Yep, they're missing off entirely. We've got some around the back of the coal bunker, but they're just molded on. We also got no etched number plate, so this printed number plate is all you've got. Again, for a modern loco, that's not fantastic. The running plate is missing a lot of detail. There's no riveting here, for example. Very, very basic. And even though between the frames is an extremely exposed area, there's no detail whatsoever. Obviously, the new Accurascale Pannier is going to have full detail between the frames. The smokebox door handle isn't entirely separately fitted. The front part is, but the rear part is just molded onto the body. The steps on the front of the tanks, these are just molded, not separately fitted, and they don't have much relief as a result. The top of the tanks are not particularly well detailed. These very prominent pipes here are just a part of the molding. They're not separately fitted. That doesn't look fantastic. And again, another prominent part is the whistles because they're painted a different color. Yet again, they are just very clearly a part of the molding. They don't look very convincing. The cab is also very poor in this locomotive. Not only do we not have a firebox flicker effect in here, we don't even have any painted details on the back head. This is molded, quite coarsely molded at that, nothing picked out. Again, that's in stark contrast to the new model that we're awaiting soon. There is this handle here, which is painted, and I guess they've done that because this is a more noticeable piece. Shame about the visible molding marks on it though. And then around the back, we've got this rack for holding fireman's tools, again, which are not included with the model, and they fit into very large and chunky holes in the back of the loco, again showing a distinct lack of refinement. So like I say, this is not a £100 locomotive, and if your local retailer isn't one that applies a 10 or 15% discount and you're being asked to pay more like £125 for this, which is the RRP, I would say don't touch this with a barge pole. Pay 15 or so pounds more to get the Accurascale one and you will thank yourself for that. Construction wise, I think I've already mentioned this, but yeah, it is just the chassis that is die cast here. So the tanks, the body, all made out of plastic, and so is the undetailed, unriveted running plate. So quite a plasticky model at that. Yet it doesn't look dreadfully plasticky because the decoration has been done extremely nicely. So we've got a great satin finish on this. That is a very good aspect of this model. And the picked out details look great as well. There's a close look at the Great Western shirt button there. That looks good. And even though we don't have an etched number plate for this loco, the printed one does look fine, although it doesn't have any relief to it, but it matches the rest of the loco in its lack of refinement. Here's a look at one of the buffer beams. These have been done nicely. So we've got the running number printed onto there, and the buffer beam itself has been painted red. And we do have buffer beam details pre-fitted. So that goes for the metal buffers, which are sprung. So that's quite good. I was surprised to see that, but sprung they are indeed. We've got pipes pre-fitted where applicable, and coupling hooks pre-fitted as well, but again, no accessory pack, so no screw or chain link couplings provided for those. The underframe looks okay though. We've got the separately fitted brake rigging, which I suppose is nice to see. A little bit of separately fitted pipe work as well underneath the running plate, which again adds a little bit of complexity to the model. The wheels are cast and the axles are covered, so again, they look reasonably refined, and so do the coupling rods. Yeah, nothing wrong with those. This is probably one of the better areas of the model. And then underneath the tanks, we have some detail, little toolbox there, a bit of pipe work, which is a separately fitted part. No details picked out around here though, which again contrasts with the sample photos of the Accurascale model. I've already showed you the top of the tanks, but let's have a little look in a bit more detail. The chimney here is just made of plastic, not a lot of detail to it, and the moulding's not brilliant either. Most of the detail is part of the moulding up here, but we do have the water fillers here, which are separate parts. And these little grab irons here, although you will have noticed, well, you might not have noticed, but when I opened the box, this one came out and popped onto the floor, and luckily I did notice and I've been able to put it back on. But again, slight assembly issue there, although I think that is the only one. The dome here is a part of the moulding, so it does fit, or appear to fit, to the rest of the body quite nicely. And I think the safety valve bonnet may be a separate part. Again, it's not too badly produced. Although, as per this livery, this part hasn't had to be painted a different colour, which is kind of a theme with this loco. It's a very basic paint job, which again should have made it relatively inexpensive to produce. Let's take another look at the cab then. So the window glazing on the front isn't particularly flush. So again, not very convincing. Up on the top, we don't have an opening vent here. This is just molded in place. Again, that's fine, but very, very basic. The rear facing windows don't have any glazing in them. Again, not amazing, but we do have this bar effect, which is just a part of the body molding, I think, but it looks relatively impressive, so that's good. And of course the cab is adorned with more of these very chunky looking handrail holders, which again makes it abundantly clear that this model is very old indeed. We do have a coal load pre-fitted to this coal bunker though, and there's nothing wrong with that. Good quality moulding, looks nice and convincing, so that's good. And around the back we do have more separately fitted wire handrails, this time without the handrail holders, so these two look a little bit more refined. Apart from that, we've got NEM tension lock couplings pre-fitted into slightly pivoting pockets there, so that seems pretty good. But apart from that, that is all this loco has to offer. It's very, very basic. It's missing a lot of the details, and the details that are here are either quite coarse and unrealistic, or just a part of the moulding. To say this is the same price as the recently released P-Class, this is a far inferior model, and at that price it should have been a lot better than it is, I would say. But anyway, I've not owned a new one of these for a very long time, so I'm curious to see how this runs. I'm curious to take a good look at the mechanism to see if that's worth some money. Sorry, I'll control myself. Let's get this down onto the track and get started. So there she is, down onto the track, from a distance looking a lot better than she does up close. I've already done the initial testing and running in, and I'll show you all of that in just a second. After that, I took the loco apart to look at the mechanism, and surprise, surprise, I'm not very impressed with this either. In fact, quite how Bachmann has the gall to peddle such poor quality mechanisms in this day and age, I have no idea at all. Do they think this is what competition looks like? Well, I'm sure Accurascale must be laughing. Anyway, let's have a look. So we've got all-wheel pickup, which is good, to be fair. We've got wiper pickups going to each wheel, so all-wheel pickup, that's a tick. The base keeper plate is fixed on with several screws. To get it off, it's best to remove the couplings. In fact, you have to remove the couplings. One screw at each end beneath the couplings, and then there's a couple of screws in the middle. With all of this off, you can just about remove the base keeper, although the base keeper pickups are hardwired, so you've got the wires to contend with. Some sort of spring-loaded contact, I think, would have been a lot better. Underneath here, you can see there are no separate bearings fitted to the axles. The axles sit straight into the metal chassis, very cheap and nasty that. Although, to be fair, the axles do sit into round slots, not square ones, so that's better than some Bachmann locos. This loco is also compensated. There's a bit of springing to the center axle, and we've just got one driven axle on this loco, and in this case, it is the rear axle. So to remove the body, I didn't refit the couplings and I left the screws at either end out. I did secure the base keeper with the center screws though, just to stop that going askew. With the two end screws out, you can lift the chassis from the body, and here it is, the very bare bones chassis, which is made of metal, but that's about all it's got going for it. No special features here, no lighting, of course, no pre-fitted speaker or anything like that. And yes, this is just a 3-pole motor. I counted the plates on the commutator to be sure. Yeah, it's just a 3-pole motor and it shows in the performance. No flywheel either, not impressed by that, and there isn't even a cover over the gears, which convinces me that this loco has been designed to be as cheap as possible in every area. Not good. And this is the DCC socket, 8-pin DCC socket, same as it used to be on this model. And then the gauging comes in back to back at 14.2 to 14.3 millimeters, which is just comfortably below the standard. Nothing wrong with that, of course. So what is the point, Bachmann, of bringing a model like this back when you know Accurascale are just about to release theirs? Now, I know it's competition, blah, blah, blah. They want to defend their territory, but that's laughable to everybody except Bachmann, seemingly. No, releasing a loco in this kind of state just goes to illustrate the inferiority of Bachmann over Accurascale. Like, is that what they want? At least with the diesels that they've duplicated, like the 37s and the 66s, at least those are going to be nice new torque projects, so they have a chance at least of competing with Accurascale. This just seems a little bit silly. And the quality of that mechanism is just so poor. So suddenly £100 doesn't seem so good for this anymore. Anyway, let's jump back in time and I'll show you how this ran. Okay, moment of truth. This loco has a lot of making up to do, doesn't it? So let's see if this is going to work. Forwards direction, first ever run. Here we go, turning up. Ah, it's alive. And not bad, actually. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Let's get a sense of the speed then. So here it is at half power. I suppose a little bit speedy for a light goods engine, really. And I bet at the full speed it can really go for it. So yeah, not brilliantly geared perhaps, but that won't matter if it can perform well at the low speeds. And I have to say, it does seem to be running really nicely. Let's do some more testing then. Let's see if there's torque there. Should be, if memory serves. Let's have a look. Fingers on buffers. Yeah, there we are. Won't do that for long, but yep, it's got plenty of torque, so that's good. Right, let's have a look and see what the crawl's like. Now, obviously, at this point, it has not been running. I'm going to run it in just a second, and then I'll do these tests again. But straight out of the box, very curious to see. Let's turn it up very gradually. Turning up. Turning up still. Not hearing any buzzing. Oh. I wonder if it had cut out there because I wasn't hearing buzzing and then it suddenly went. So let's try again. Very gradually. Well, perhaps I can hear buzzing. It's just very quiet. Okay, turning up gradually. Very slowly. Right. Not brilliant. Obviously I'm doing this on analog. Mileage on DCC may vary, but we've seen much better on analog. Seems to be able to do a bit slower in reverse. Yeah, well, it's slower, but it's not smooth. Oh dear. Jerky. So you guys, well, if it's visible on the inside, you guys will know by now what motor this has got, whether it's a 3 or a 5 polar. Doesn't seem to be running like a 5 polar. So if it is a 5 pole, it's probably not a brilliant one. But no, I would guess this has got a 3 pole motor. I'll see if I'm right. But yeah, that's not great. So hopefully running in will improve that. Oh, I've got a bit slower there. All right, but no, it's jerking. It's not able to sustain it. It keeps stopping. Not great. So let's get this running then. I think it really does need that. 30 minutes in both directions, and we'll also see how it gets on around the track. Here we go, 50%. All right, so relatively simple loco. Shouldn't see any issues around curves. No, not even any slowing down. So it's a mixed bag on performance. At least it is before running in has complete. It does seem reliable. It's not been cutting out or anything, not on curves and points anyway. It does seem to be smooth at the higher speeds as well, not struggling around curves or anything, and there does seem to be plenty of torque, so that's good. It is struggling at the slow speeds though, and for a loco primarily used for sort of light duties, goods work, you would think that crawling and precise manoeuvrability would be quite important for this loco, and the fact that it can't do that is a bit of a problem. But there is a chance that will improve as this loco runs in, and hopefully it will, because it's going to need some good marks on performance. So we shall see. Anyway, I'll let her run in now, 30 minutes in both directions, and then I'll be back. There we go, that is running in complete. And I have to say, at the high speeds, this is a perfectly good runner. Yeah, the motor seems to be perfectly good for any high speed stuff. It didn't derail, it didn't cut out, it doesn't slow down on curves or anything like that. Yep, the performance is fine. I think we probably just need to do the crawl now because everything else was spot on. So let's see whether that has improved. I think a crawl is quite important for this class. So let's see what it can do. Here we go, turning up slowly. It was very poor before. Let's see if it's improved. Turning up. No, it hasn't. It started jerking. Well, I suppose it is slower now, but it's not a smooth motion. It's just jerking forwards a little bit at a time. You can almost see the 3-pole motor clicking over, can't you? Again, it's 2025. Why have we still got a 3-pole motor in this? Dearie me, turned it up. Still not smooth at that speed. Still jerking. And there we go. Then it becomes smooth. So it's still not a crawler. It's not as bad as it was. It's going slower than it was. And at those speeds, it does look lovely. It really does. But again, it's a shame it can't do the crawls. What about in reverse? Turning up. You have to give it quite a bit of power before it starts to move. See, that was smooth, but it didn't start at a slow speed. It just kind of took off. It's hard to control, not very controllable. Yeah, it's done it again. So it swapped sides. It was a better crawler in reverse before, and now it's better forwards. Yeah, it's no good. But then again, it's a 3-pole motor, so that's not a surprise, is it? Needs a cordless motor, Bachmann, or a 5-poler. Anyway, tractive effort, not too bad, I suppose, for a loco with an all-plastic body. It comes in at 0.23 newtons, so, you know, it's not great, but that should allow it to haul some reasonably prototypical loads. And with that in mind, I've decided to set up the Rapido B-set coaches. A little bit unfair on the B-set coaches to couple them up to such an inferior Pannier tank, but hopefully I'll have a better one to couple up to them soon. Anyway, let's back up. Let's see how she gets on with a bit of a load. Here we go. Just give me 5 minutes while we reach the point at which the loco starts. There we go. I'm sorry, the snarkiness has set in because that's all I've got left. Right, will the couplings at least work? Well, they usually do with Bachmann. Oh, they did. Hallelujah. Let's have a coupling party. Something works. There we go. Right, well, let's see what this loco looks like going around the track with a couple of coaches, and then I'll let you go. You can go and watch some paint dry, something like that. Right, here we go then. A little bit slower than before because the loco does run a bit fast, so let's go for about 40 speed. That looks more sensible. Alright, so see which other Pannier tanks you can spot around the track today. On the middle line I'm running my other version of this same model. This is the Railway Children Pannier, which I bought absolutely years ago, and even so it still failed to impress me back then. But I suppose Bachmann are improving because, well, I was going to say at least this new one's made it through the review. Technically it hasn't yet. Still got a few more minutes to do without breaking down before it's beaten this one. But anyway, whatever. There it goes. Interesting livery, at least. Very interesting coaches. And then on the inside line we've got the Bachmann 64XX, which is, well, it's still quite a simple loco, but it's a little bit more refined than today's engine. I mean, it's got lamp brackets, which I never expected to consider as a bonus, but I am doing now. Yeah, if you've got lamp brackets on your locos, manufacturers, I'm now going to be mightily impressed. Little bit of a joke there. Anyway, let's catch up with today's loco. All right, there she goes. Obviously not going to struggle with these B-set coaches, but it's nice to see her hauling something. And you know what, to be fair, I've been very critical of this, and rightly so, of course. But from a distance and at sort of speed, this is a passable loco. It looks fine, it does the job. But the problem is, so do the Hornby Railroad 060s, and they don't cost £100, at least not yet. We'll give Hornby time, but no, not £100. I think £100 is too much for a model with a level of detail and a mechanism like this. There are countless examples of much better locos of a similar price tag than this, and it's a real pity that Bachmann chose to bring this back now without updating it sufficiently. I think people would have been happy to pay £100 or even more if this had been substantially upgraded, but no, this is a basic beginner model with very, very limited detail. It should have been priced accordingly. But I hope Bachmann have their fussy with this model now, because when a Curoscales Pannier tank drops, this model is going to be unsellable. At least it will be at this price. It will have to be discounted in order to sell those after this. at least to a customer who knows full well what they're getting into. That is, of course, providing Accurascale can deliver the goods and produce a model without any issues. Obviously, we don't know that yet. I trust Accurascale, they've done it before, I'm sure they'll do it again, but yeah, the pressure is on them now to show Bachmann and the rest of us what a good pannier tank truly looks like, and hopefully it won't be too long until we find out. But this isn't it. No, this is an £80 model at best, sold for more than it's worth, and it's dragging Bachmann's range back to 2005. Which is fine, you know, if that's the kind of model people want to buy, then great, that is what Bachmann is delivering, but I think customers need to know that, and hopefully this video will help to illustrate that for people. But anyway, it's a mixed bag. I think more bad than good on this occasion, but there's still some good here. I like the way the loco's been painted. I guess the general proportions of the thing are okay, and like I say, at speed it looks perfectly acceptable. So not all bad, but equally not a whole lot of good to speak of either. And now then, some ratings for Bachmann's 8750 class. Yeah, I remembered this model not being very good, and I was right. In fact, this is worse than I remember it being. The level of detail I've given a generous 2-star, and I think this is generous because there's really not much to praise here at all. So, we've got missing running plate detail, no lamp brackets, no riveting on there. That looks really bad. We've got very coarse, chunky cab detail, none of it painted on the back. We've got no detail between the frames. We've got moulded pipework on top of the tanks, which doesn't look very realistic. No working lights or special features or anything like that. The only things I can praise are the paintwork. The paint job is fantastic on this model. I won't fault that. That has been done well. And I guess the inclusion of sprung buffers. Everything else really is pretty poor here. We don't even have couplings for the coupling hooks or any accessories to fit. Very, very poor. Performance though is a lot better. It is smooth and reliable on the track, it doesn't cut out, it seems to be consistent. That's very good. Plenty of torque in the mechanism as well. It doesn't get 5-star though because it just can't crawl. It is smooth down to a relatively slow speed, but we've seen locos that can do a lot better crawls than this, so this can't get a 5. Pulling power then, the tractive effort came in at 0.23 newtons, making this the weakest of my Bachmann pannier tanks. The 94XX is nearly double that at 0.39 newtons, and even the 64XX, which is quite light and plasticky too, still manages to be more powerful than this at 0.26. 16 coaches on straight and level track though, it's not too bad, I would say it's adequate, but again, nothing out of the ordinary or particularly impressive about this. The mechanism, just like the detail, really has not impressed me. It's a very poor quality mechanism. And yes, this is 20 years old now, whatever. Even in 2005, Hornby were fitting proper bearings to their driving axles, 5-pole motors, tender pickups where locos had tenders. Much better mechanisms than this were around even 20 years ago. So the lack of bearings, the 3-pole motor, the lack of flywheel, the wires instead of the spring-loaded contacts, and the missing basics such as a cover over the gears, let's say. These are all completely unacceptable, even though this model is relatively cheap on the grand scheme of things these days. Quality then, again, is okay. The build for the most part was pretty good. No issues with the decoration, no visible glue or anything like that. But the body is very plasticky. We don't have any die-cast tanks, for example, no die-cast running plates, and right out of the box I had to glue a detail part back onto this loco. There's not many detail parts, but one of them still managed to drop off the model. Value for money then, you might be surprised to see I've only given this a middle-of-the-road 3-star. With an RRP of £124.95 or a typical retailer price of £99.95, this seems quite reasonable compared with other models. Until you see this model. And when I saw it, I thought this is not cheap enough. This is the same price as that P-Class by Accurascale, which was so much better, so much more detail, separate parts, complexity, quality mechanism, 5-pole motor. The list just goes on and on. And we know Bachmann. As far as I'm concerned, they have a habit of overpricing their models. If a Bachmann model comes out and you think, blimey, that's cheap, then cheap is going to be the operative word. If Bachmann seem to be selling something for cheap, then you know it's really going to be a rotter. And this is, I would not recommend buying this. So overall then, that is a score of 5.63 out of 10, which is a grade of F or a fail. Yes, the detail, the mechanism, the performance, and the price all fell below expectations. This model may have a place in the hobby as a cheap, inexpensive beginner loco, but I wouldn't expect to pay £100 for that. This is worth 80 at the absolute most. And I think Bachmann and the retailers could have done more to make it clear what an old and basic model this was. You wouldn't know how shoddy this loco was looking at the descriptions here. Little misleading, I think. Anyway, never mind that, into the logbook. 25th place, not so great then, above Hornby's 153 and below Hornby's 110. So yeah, it's the same kind of level as a Hornby Railroad DMU. It's the ultimate insult I can give. So would I recommend this? No, just wait until the Acura Scale 1 comes out and then you'll see what a good pannier tank looks like. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for this review. Thank you ever so much for watching as always, and feel free to send me some feedback on this review. Obviously these are just my opinions, you may disagree with them, and if so, that's fine. So let me know, do you think I got this spot on, or do you think I was too harsh and this loco actually isn't that bad? If you fall into the latter category, stay tuned to the channel. There's another pannier tank locomotive review on the way, hopefully quite soon, that I think you'll find very interesting. But no, people have different tastes. People might not want to pay £140 for a Acura Scales pannier. They may only have £100 to spend on a pannier, in which case this is the best option. But I would recommend spending a little bit more, it's less than 50% more, on getting something that we can be pretty sure, based on the samples, is going to be more than 100% better. But then again, they haven't delivered those goods yet, so we shall have to see. Anyway, that will just about do it. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you again for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.